如果你的老板或客户是一位讲求效率、做事果断、喜欢独立思考的人，你应该要如何跟他沟通呢？ Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. It's episode 3 on our discussion of social styles. Last time we went over the analytical style, who is low on responsiveness and low on assertiveness. Today, we're going to look at their close neighbor, the driver, who is high on assertiveness, more tell-oriented, but also low on responsiveness, keeping it a more logical and controlled emotional style.
那在今天的单元，我们同样来聊一下一个比较理性的，也就是 driver。那 driver 呢，当然他就是比较讲求效率啊，做事很果断的人。那我们今天的 episode 我们就会来讲，如果今天你的老板是跟客户，他是一个 driver 的话，你要怎么样来设计你的简报，来 plan 你的简报，还有呢，比如说 small talk 跟开会的时候该注意什么。
So driver is one of those styles that sounds exactly like what the person does. They drive. Drivers are easily characterized by people who like move forward. They like momentum. They like movement. They don't like sitting around and discussing a lot of things. Similar to another style we'll discuss later, expressives, drivers have a tendency to make decisions very quickly. But whereas an analytical will make decision based on all the information, gathering all the data, the numbers, every possible strategy or scenario, a driver just likes to execute based on a few key ideas. So this is a lot of what we're going to make recommendations on based on if you're talking to your boss who's a driver or a coworker or a client. How you give information, how quickly you get to the key point, how you structure that information is really, really critical when talking to a driver.
So that's actually really interesting. And of course, Nick himself is a driver. Do you like small talk?
I do not care for small talk unless it is completely necessary. When it comes to meetings, when it comes to discussions, it's like, tell me why we're here, and then I can decide how much energy and time I will put into it.
Okay, so I have another question then. We all feel like small talk, it's part of a meeting or part of the business, you know, what we do every day. But if we're facing a driver, then you mentioned yourself, driver 其实没有那么喜欢 small talk. 他喜欢马上进入重点。今天的重点是什么？那这样子的话 is it okay for us to skip small talk with a driver?
I wouldn't say that your default is to skip small talk. Small talk is still really important when it comes to building relationships and having a connection with someone. But it's not something you should linger on for a long time. As maybe you can ask a few key questions, get the room warmed up, or if you're waiting for other people to come into a meeting, you can have that discussion. But once it's go time, it's go time. Like, you know, once everyone has joined the meeting room, or let's say on a conference call, everyone has shown up. Don't linger on the small talk or try and push it forward. It's not like I need 5 minutes. As soon as everyone's in the room, if you know that the boss or the critical decision maker is a driver, just move on.
Okay, got it. So again, like if you happen to host a meeting and you have drivers in the audience, 那这个时候你就要很小心，就是你不要让 small talk 太久。Right? Like everyone's here, 大家好像 exchange pleasantry. Okay. All right. So since everyone's here, let's move on. Right? You kind of quickly take that into the meeting.
And that'll be different from other styles where you actually do want to leave more room for getting to know them.
Right.
and working with them. We'll cover that in other styles. But if it comes to a driver. Now, the thing that a lot of people mistake is that just because they don't want to have the early small talk, they want to get to the key point of the meeting quickly means that like they're not friendly or they don't have patience. But it's actually more like the way that they value the time is in reverse, which is if you actually get to the point, do things quickly, make decisions quickly, they'll actually have more time after. Because they'll feel as like what needed to be accomplished got accomplished. But it's when the beginning gets drug out for a long time, they don't really know why they're there, or it's not clear right away why they're there, what decisions get drug out for a very long time, then they're just going to lose patience over the meeting. But if it's like you get in, you're very efficient, then they'll actually be quite satisfied and willing to spend a little bit more time talking to people.
Okay, so again, small talk is still important, but for driver, it doesn't necessarily have to start in the very beginning. You can actually have that quality small talk at the very end once you discuss what needs to be discussed in the meeting.
I would say that one quality of a driver that you'll see is that they're evaluating how much time and energy they want to put into something. So if you're very quick to do what they expect, or if they're happy with the result very quickly, they've already decided like, okay, this is worth my time and energy, and they'll put it there.
Okay.
But if it's just like a classic sign of a driver, that first question is, why am I here?
Right.
What do we want to do? What's your point? Why are you telling me these things? If you can do that very quickly, then you will have their attention going forward. But if it takes a very long time to get to the point, and a lot of people like, I will cover all the details, all the background information, all the story, then the driver is impatient and wants to get out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah. 所以也就是啊 drivers 其实当他听到太多他不需要的 information 他会容易烦 right? You guys get annoyed. Impatient. 所以我觉得其实这边的重点是当你在跟 driver 比如说在开会那要不要 small talk 其实 small talk 的问的问题其实那不是重点而是 small talk 是什么时候做那才是重点就是其实你要把很重要的事情来先讨论完 then small talk can also be really fun with the driver.
So a driver, like the name, they prefer momentum, they prefer movement. What makes a driver a good leader or a good communicator is they are the person that's always pushing forward. If you have a group of people who have a tendency to like sit in one idea for a long time or go in circles in a conversation, a driver is usually the person who will cut that and be like, okay, what's your point? What do you want to get done? How do we do it now? Right? Or if you have a project or an idea that you've been mulling over for a long time, if you take it to a driver, they will just organize it. Be like, okay, you need to do this, let's get started.
I see. So now let's switch gear a little bit. Let's say we're going to present to a driver. That person may be our boss, 可能是老板客户好了。那我们在安排这个简报的时候 do we just use that very quick and concise way? Like maybe in the very beginning, just give them like 3 key points and that's it. Would that be like the perfect way for a driver?
Yeah, that would be the perfect way. That in the podcast, we talk a lot about how do you bring things down to one main idea or 3 key points. The most important person that you want to be able to do this with is a driver.
Yeah.
So opening that presentation with, okay, there are 3 things that I need to cover today. 1, 2, 3. But also importantly, because a driver is about action, momentum, having your action points or that you center your discussion around what needs to be done. If you want the meeting to be more focused on brainstorming, you need to be upfront about that before the meeting. If you bring a driver into a room and they think that they're there for, okay, we're going to have a quick meeting, we're going to get updates on things, we're going to be explained what needs to get done, I can give input. A driver is a tell-oriented style on the assertiveness scale. So you do need to leave room for input, but their input is not going to be a brainstorming session. Their input is going to be a, what do we need to get done? And then do you have any advice on how to do it? But if you just go into the meeting and be like, oh, let's brainstorm or think about these ideas, a driver will be upset from moment 1 because that is not why they showed up to the meeting.
所以如果你是需要一边想一边讲，然后一边整理自己思绪的人呢， don't find a driver to do this.
It's not you can't find a driver to do this. You need to tell them ahead of time. If you want to have a brainstorming session,
So they can get ready.
you need to label that meeting very clearly. Okay, next Tuesday, we're going to sit down and we're going to brainstorm out how to get this thing done. Now, again, the driver can mentally prepare for that's a brainstorming session. But if you go, hey, let's have a meeting next Tuesday. I want to run a few ideas by you. And then they show up to the meeting and be like, I've been thinking about these things. I'm not really sure which one I want to do, or I haven't thought about any of the details. Right there, your driver is pissed. Like, that is not, you said you want to run ideas by me, which to me means, here's my idea, here's how I want to do it, can you give me feedback?
也所以了，如果你今天要跟 driver 做任何的沟通的话，你要先想清楚这个沟通是什么 What is it really? 那把它想清楚之后呢，你要跟 driver 非常的清楚的讲 explain to him or explain to her what this meeting actually would be about. So I think that's really important. Continue with the discussion of presentation. Let's say our driver is the decision maker in the audience, but we do have other people here in the audience as well, right? We have analytical, we got expressive, and other people. So if I use this really concise way of presenting to the driver, am I neglecting everyone else?
Not necessarily. The way to think about that is that any presentation you make, the first 2 to 3 minutes are really for the driver because that's where they're going to get the most out of your presentation. If your key ideas are there and some explanation of what you want to do about it, just opening, if you do it well in the first 2 to 3 minutes, the nice thing is the driver's done. Then they've gotten the key points. They know what you want. They've probably decided how they're going to help you or what they're going to do. And then you've satisfied that group. Now you can spend the rest of your presentation hitting the other styles. And so it's less about, okay, do I make my whole presentation about the driver?
Yeah.
No, it's actually just more that first 2 to 3 minutes is aimed at satisfying that person. Because after 2 to 3 minutes, their decision-making process is over. They've decided what they want to do and whether they're in it or not. Then you can focus the rest of your presentation on, for example, more details to give the analytical that sense of satisfaction. They're the ones going to be asking a lot of questions like, what about this? Why aren't there any details on this? Explain that more. Aside from that first 2 to 3 minutes, the one other thing you can really do to satisfy a driver, but actually I think every style will want this as well, at the end you want to have a strong summary plus the actions that you've either proposed or the actions that have been decided through discussion in the group. Because drivers are back to being a very action-oriented and a tell-oriented. That means that they need to see that something has been decided and that people know what their role is. It's not just like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going to do this thing and no idea like how to do the next thing. Then a driver will feel compelled to stand up and be like, okay, that's what you want to do? Then person A, you do this. Person B, you do this. Person C, you do this. Like very clear cut what is going on next.
Okay, so again, 如果我们今天对方是 driver, 我们做完 presentation 一样，我们要给一个非常清楚的一个 conclusion. 这个 conclusion 一定要有 action steps, right? 因为这个 action step 表示今天的这个会议它是有个很清楚的一个结果。There's a very clear conclusion to this meeting. And also, so you mentioned that if, let's say, the presenter didn't really have, or the host of the meeting didn't really actually have action steps, driver would step in, will actually tell people what should be done.
Yeah, so a lot of people will maybe see a driver as someone very bossy. But it actually has more to do with if they have seen the type of action or movement that they expected. If the person hosting the meeting is very clear about what needs to get done next and who is doing what, a driver will walk away satisfied. Again, they're a fast decision maker. So if they feel that, no, this is in good hands, this is the right person to do it, then they're done. They're good. But it's when someone leaves that very open-ended meeting time, then they need that sense of closure. This has been decided. This will be done. So that's usually when a driver will start to drive, like take over a meeting, is when they feel like, okay, no decision or no conclusion has actually happened. Then you will see them step in. And depending on them as an actual manager or a leader, they may do that well or they may not do that well. That's not really what a social style indicates. But you will just notice that if there's someone who halfway through the meeting, they just can't take that it's not organized anymore, they will just handle it. Now, that leads to sort of the negative side of being a driver, which is they are driving the car and they don't care if anyone's in the car or not.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I am a driver and I am presenting to a bunch of people who are not drivers, and I'm just going to go, what's going to happen then?
If your style is a driver, you actually need to be able to recognize that while you're executing, if no one else has any idea what's going on, then slowing down and actually understanding that other people do need that. So a growth action for a driver is actually to stop and listen or stop and pay attention. When drivers are under extreme stress or pressure, they will just do stuff. They won't discuss it with anyone else. They will not. So there have been times in the company where way too much is happening. And my default is I'll just do all the projects. I won't discuss them with anyone. I won't talk about what needs to get done. And then people will be like, hey, what's the status on that? And be like, I finished that weeks ago. We don't even need to think about it. It's over. But that also means that a lot of the cooperation, collaboration, things that come from working as a group get lost. So when a driver is under that extreme, like go mode, sometimes they need to stop and notice like, hey, no one else is in the car. Maybe I need to figure this out.
那希望今天单元能够让大家更了解该如何跟这个行动派的人的 drivers 能够跟他沟通，不管是做简报 small talk 或者是会议上面的安排也好。So I really hope this episode helped you guys and just to understand a little bit more about drivers.
As in the last episodes, we will put a handout in the show notes that has a little more detail on each style so that you can follow along or get a better sense of what we're discussing. If you have any other questions, go ahead and find us on social media or through the podcast. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production. Produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.